The exact moment a prospect says, "I need some time to think about it," a silent clock starts ticking. You enter a 10-second test that determines who actually holds the authority in the room. For an amateur, those 10 seconds trigger pure panic. The immediate instinct is to lean forward, talk a little faster, and push harder by defending the price or over-explaining the value of the product. But falling back on traditional hard-selling tactics has an immediate consequence. The prospect instantly detects the shift in your tone, and it broadcasts a clear signal of desperation. The very reflexes we instinctively use to try and salvage a slipping deal are the exact mechanical actions that guarantee its death. On the other side of the table, that applied pressure automatically triggers the buyer's defensive resistance. They stop evaluating your solution and start defending themselves against a threat. And even if you manage to exhaust them into signing the contract, you carry a severe long-term risk. Forcing an agreement plants the psychological seeds for heavy buyer's remorse the moment they leave the room. This leaves us with a structural problem to solve. How do you respond to a hesitant buyer and keep the deal alive without surrendering your status or looking like you desperately need the commission? Solving this paradox requires resisting the instinct to push back and choosing a path that contradicts standard sales advice. To handle hesitation without sounding desperate, you use a conversational pivot called the pullback method. Instead of actively trying to persuade the prospect, you stop pitching and instantly offer a genuine out. The script starts by explicitly granting the prospect permission to take all the time they need without penalty. You say, "No worries at all if you need more time. You're completely free to take as long as you need." Then you frame yourself as highly selective, prioritizing their absolute certainty over a rushed closing. Like I said, I'm selective about who I work with. I'd rather you think about it and be absolutely sure than rush into something you're not ready for. Delivering those lines completely resets the power dynamic. You are deliberately dropping your end of the conversational tug-of-war rope. This approach relies on a scientific foundation. Dozens of behavioral psychology studies have centered around the effectiveness of 4 specific words, but you are free. When you explicitly acknowledge a person's autonomy and remove all psychological pressure, you bypass their defensive wall. They cease to feel like they are being actively sold to. This diagram illustrates psychological reactance. When you push against a solid barrier with traditional sales pressure, it holds firm. Retracting that force creates a structural vacuum, forcing their objection. By removing the external pressure to buy, the seller allows the prospect's own drive for autonomy to steer them back toward the commitment. But there is a critical warning attached to this method. If you try to weaponize the pullback as a manipulative bluff, it will backfire instantly. Prospects have a highly tuned radar for manufactured scarcity. If you secretly need the commission to survive, your tone and body language will give you away. Their subconscious will detect the underlying desperation. For this to work, your willingness to let them walk away must be 100% authentic. You must genuinely mean it when you give them the out, a mindset that is much easier to maintain when you already have a few recent client wins under your belt. The hard truth is that you cannot fake authority. True conversational leverage only exists when you are genuinely unaffected by a no. Once you master this pullback, the dynamic of your meetings shifts. Objections stop acting as terrifying roadblocks and instead transform into high-status filters that actively attract serious buyers. And this baseline of autonomy is just the foundation. Top performers stack deeper psychological frameworks on top of this technique, eventually learning how to turn objections into the exact reasons a prospect decides to buy. In the high-stakes game of professional sales, you only win by authentically proving you don't need to play it.